This is day 9, daily number for show. And interestingly, you're noticing that the light looks a little bit different. Oh, what's happening? It's the afternoon. That's right, if you're watching live right now, I have to hop on an airplane in about 3 hours, and rather than just cancel the daily, that would be so rude, I'm pre-recording it early. And in terms of pre-recording, I could have done it alone in the isolation of my room, but I actually can't. I suck at doing that. I'm horrible at recording things. Like, if I ever tried to go into acting in a film, I would suck ass horrifically. I need the live element to be okay and function properly. That means I need you. So, hi live guys. A little 1,000 or so beautiful, dedicated Day 9 Daily viewers. 995. Excellent. It's an intimate, tiny audience that we have today. And if you're watching this at 7 p.m., then that means you're watching a rebroadcast. And if you're watching on the archive, then you probably think that nothing's going wrong. But as an interesting addendum, today's daily will be one continuous long segment, one of the old school 30-minute styles. It will also be a little bit shorter. We're going to be at about 30 minutes because I have to go to the airport at 2:15 and it's about 1:30 now. So let's talk about the topic of today. This one gross booger will not go away. Excellent. There we go. Everything is so crisp and clean. I am going to talk about the difference between playing on the ladder versus playing, or I should say watching people play on the GSL. When you watch the GSLers do their good old thing, or even like the finals of a big tournament over here in the States or in Europe, you will see people have these beautiful, well thought out, refined strategies that are super late-term focused. You will see a player like Bomber do barracks, command center, and then play out a normal Terran versus Protoss with mega macro mode. You will see Protoss players like, I don't know, who did I see do this recently? Night End. I saw Night End go for 5-gate, Stalker with Sentry and Blink, and take a really fast third in Protoss versus Zerg. A cool long-term focused strategy. Nice. We have all these sorts of things that we see on air all the time, and excluding the very, very early days of GSL, we don't see a lot of crazy, absolutely bonkers shit cheese. And this is something that happens all the time on the ladder. You see nutty bonker shit stuff on a day-to-day basis. People trying to go 14 pool followed by hatch in your base when you are one basing. You're not even early expanding. You see people do crazy things like, what are some awesome ones? Yes, the infamous 7 warp gate Warp Prism all-in. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this one. This is one of my favorite cheese strategies. You build 7 warp gates in your main and a robotics facility. And you might say, 7 warp gates? That seems like a gross excess. It is. You wait for your opponent to start moving down his ramp, and then you walk in, turn on the warp prism, force field his ramp, and warp in a whole army there for the win. It's so fun! And you just don't see that when you're playing in GSL. You only really see that when you're on the ladder. And that's what we're going to be doing today. We're looking at White Ra versus Bly. Pretty strong Zerg player on the Acer team, who is doing some absolutely nuts ape shit stuff against White Ra. And what we're just going to do twice in a row is we're going to practice the idea of where does our edge come from and what are things that we do want to do and don't want to do. So as we step on in, we have White Ra. Obviously, this is going to have somewhat of a Protoss focus on it today. But the important thing is that we want to think about the idea of cheese behind the idea of the cheese at all points in time. We want to be thinking about what is actually good and bad in a more meta sense, right? We don't want to be like, if he goes for a Dark Templar push, then you must respond the following. We want to say something like, if he goes for a lot of early pressure, we want to respond in the following way. Alright, looks like I'm dropping some frames. Looks like I'm still dropping some frames. Come on. Come on. My encoder. Come on, encoder. Come on, encoder. Come on, stop it, encoder. Encoder, stop it. Oh my god, you guys haven't had frames for like 10 seconds. You still aren't having frames. Come on, encoder. Come on, pick it back up, encoder. Come on, encoder. Pick it back up, encoder. Come on. Come on. Come on. Alright, let me actually just go to a blank screen of this owl who's very sad. You guys can still hear me, right? If you can still hear me, just be like, what up, Day 9? Hey, there we go. Now this owl managed to pull us back together. There's the overlay. Oh, what a relief. There's been something wrong with one of the relay servers recently. It's just cutting frames. In the middle of most dailies, it's just like, you're not going to get video for 20 seconds. And I'm like, no, I want the video so bad. Cool. Now that we seem to be back, let's go ahead and hop back into the game. Hopefully people are still connected. So, excellent. White Ra, he's going to be early expanding. And again, we can say he is doing a 15 Nexus focused build and this sort of thing. But in a general sense, what we really want to be doing is saying he is a StarCraft player early expanding. If he was a Zerg early expanding or Terran early expanding or Protoss early expanding, the same basic idea follows through. That if you early expand, you want to be focusing on defending and focusing on getting your economy going. It doesn't make a lot of sense to early expand and then do a swift all-in at the 6-minute mark. It may as well be a one-base, better, swifter all-in at the 5-minute mark. So, okay, we end up seeing our opponent with some sort of aggressive, focused build. Now, you're obviously seeing this and going, whoa, who does that? Who does that? What a crazy person? Ends up going for a hatchery to Bly's doing it. We don't see this on GSL or in the finals of an MLG or IEM, no, but we will see this on the ladder all the time. What's going to be happening is Bly is going to be going for a very fast spine crawler push. Very fast spine crawler push. So White Ra is doing the expected ordering of things. Gateway, cannon going down, nifty, thrifty, fantastic. Nothing of note has really happened at this point yet. We're also seeing Zergling speed wrap up. And at this point, White Ra manages to get the good scout in. And this, I think, is an important thing to note. When we are here... When we are here, what are we expecting? We are expecting the Zerg player to go for a fast Zergling speed. There is a world of difference between expecting and assuming. If you expect him to go fast Zergling speed, you should probably be checking to see if he has Zergling speed at some point. If you assume he's going Zergling speed, this is where you get into a lot of trouble. Because, as one of my favorite sayings goes, assuming makes you fucking lose games you shouldn't ever fucking lose ever. Doesn't quite have the ring. Doesn't quite have the cool cadence, but it's important. Cool. We're expecting him. We are expecting him to go for a fast Zergling speed build, but we are not assuming that he's going to be going for fast Zergling speed. Know your timings. This takes about 2 minutes. Always round. Round a lot. Rounding is good. Round, 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 round. About 2 minutes, about 5 minutes, we should be seeing Zergling speed. So let's go ahead and try to get as much information as we can. Like this probe. This probe knows that there's no Zergling speed. Woohoo! There we go. He's going to start checking in here. Bam! No third. Okay. How's the progress on the second going? Bam! Well, that's unusual. Expansions always come first, and of course, we end up popping into here. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now, White Ra is going to do what we call emergency preparations. I was speaking in general terms. We have a player who is early expanding, focusing on the economy, focusing on this sort of thing. But then, we see this sort of craziness happen. In the abstract sense, yeah, he is a StarCraft player going for the economy. This phase, for whatever sort of crazy early pressure you're under, you gotta do whatever it takes to stay alive, obviously. And White Ra ends up building these photon cannons quite far ahead. Chrono boosts out a lot of zealots, brings the probes to desperately try to kill these off in time, and manages to do so successfully. The point of this daily is not the defense part here. It is now thinking of, first of all, we did the scout beforehand and prepared for it. Now what do we do afterwards? What do we do afterwards? A pretty important follow-up whenever you're in some sort of, my opponent just tried something all-in-ish and it didn't work. Especially against Zerg, it's good to do some kind of minor push. This will force him to make a lot of units and focus a lot on defense when really he's trying to get his economy back up. I've said that basic statement, and it's important to take one more step and do the more broad statement, which is, if my opponent dumped a lot into an early all-in and it didn't work, where is my edge? Economy, and focusing on the economy and devoting everything to the economy. Chrono Boost should be largely focused on probes. If I were a Zerg player, I would want to focus almost all my production on drones. I would not want to be going for some sort of all-in counter push. This is going to force my opponent to be behind on economy. It's units instead of drones. But look at the production. White Ra is not still making a lot of units. He's not still going to reinforce this attack. He's just trying to force a round of Lings, maybe 5 or 6 rounds of Lings. And of course, keep an eye on this expansion. That pylon was there and it got cancelled. That pylon is not nearly as important as the idea of keeping a probe there to monitor this expansion. Bly barely ends up defending it. Nice. Now to note, I'm going to ask the pop quiz question, what is White Ra's correct follow-up now? I should even say, probably back here at around the 9-minute mark, what is his correct follow-up? What is the best follow-up to be doing in a position like this? And again, I don't want you to say, Colossus, you should be going for, I don't know, Dark Templar or High Templar. You should be doing a 6-gate push. I want you to speak generically. What White Ra should be doing is that he knows he has an economic lead. He knows his edge is in economy. So he should defend as best he can, make sure he doesn't lose to some sort of early attack, and go for a fast third. Big defense and go for a fast third. Very much so what he should do. If he goes for an early push, he's going to be in a little bit of trouble. Why is that? Because if we go for an early push, we're not emphasizing what our strength is, which is economy. We're ahead in economy. We want to keep the lead in economy. I see all these gateways going down. I see a robo going down. I'm seeing defense right now. I want to get up a bunch of gateways to make sure I can defend. I want to get up the observer to make sure I can have detection for some sort of burrow. And I want to be going for this third, because what really can he do? It's kind of that phrase that Artosis always says, when you're ahead, get more ahead. Don't try to just go kill him. So we end up with a nice defense, thanks largely in part to this big flood of gateways we threw down. Although the game is done, I'll note the biggest mistake that can ever happen at a time like this in the ladder is you've held off the all-in, and then you build up a whole bunch of gateways, you have your proxy pylon, you get ready, you do an attack, and it doesn't work. And now the game's even again. You've thrown your lead away. Taking that third base after you've held off a big all-in is really critical. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a completely different, as we lose a few more frames, we're going to take a look at a completely different nutty game from Bly, which is also something that happens a lot on the ladder. And we're going to see, again, this sort of good response follow-up, but we're also going to see a little bit of faltering that ends up happening. Because it's very easy for us to cling to our beautiful, well-designed builds that have these clear follow-up steps in them from start to finish. And we end up winning lots of games when we're in this small, rigid box of standard play. But when our opponents do something unorthodox, it's easy for us to falter, get behind, get thrown off, and to not just ask basic questions like, where is my lead? What is my edge? So here, we're going to see something very different. In the last game, we talked a lot about economy, even though this crazy early expand ended up happening. This crazy early spine crawler push happened to our early expand. We knew that our edge was in the economy front. White Ra just does the scout. Excellent. We are not being 6-pooled. We see Bly poking in here, sees that there is indeed an early expand. He is not being one-based. There is not some sort of tech focus. There's the spawning pool going down. And of course the purpose of this drone is to just make sure that there's circling going on and that there's no greedy 15 Nexus that ends up planting down. And Bly, we're actually going to see, gets in there. A drone actually can beat a probe. And we end up seeing this sort of nuttiness go down. This is not something we see a lot in GSL, unless you're watching Leenock, but This is something we see on ladder a lot. This is a sort of cheese play. We need to be equipped to deal with this. What if White Raw had a really cool 6-gate plan? Or hell, let me stop talking about White Raw. Let me talk about you. What if you were playing online and you encountered this sort of odd placement of hatchery? And you had this beautiful plan to go for a 6-gate and transition into a Dark Templar rush, and you're taking your 3rd and you're getting Colossus up, and you have this huge grandiose plan, and all of a sudden, well, I don't actually have an expansion, so, cool. We're going to see White Raw do something that's fairly common to see players do, which is to kind of just still go for the early expand and all that sort of good stuff. We're just doing the same thing that we did before, but a little bit delayed. So right as this funky moment happens, where the Zerglings just waltz right on in, and the Zealot gets chrono boosted right on out, we have to deal with this sort of shenaniganry. I'm going to stop here. And I want to think about together, and when I mean together, I mean think about White Raw and Bly together. Think about together what the advantages and the disadvantages lie. And of course, I want you and I to be talking together. Okay, so it's very easy. Oh my god, I'm shedding. There's hairs. There's hairs on the... Put those away. Maybe I'm balding. I don't know. But I did see some manly hair. Hell, maybe it's the arm hair. I don't know. I don't know. Man, the room just is so bright during the day. It's so cool. So let me lean back a little bit in my brightened daily room. Okay, what is the... let's talk about economy. Who's ahead and who's behind on economy? I would probably say neither is ahead or behind. Ordinarily, the Zerg builds an early hatch at his own base and takes an early 3rd at his own side of the map and starts powering a lot of drones. And ordinarily, the Protoss builds an early expand and starts chrono boosting a lot of probes. And we both get a big surge in economy. Since he spent his hatch on our Nexus is delayed, and his hatch at his expansion is also delayed. As a result, we are kind of about equal. I think a big mistake that a lot of players will make in this circumstance is they will try to just focus really heavy on the economy front. They'll try to get back on to the track that their build was set to earlier. I don't mind that, because again, if we have a plan, it's better to stick to our weakened plan than it is to come up with something new. However, I want to note that oftentimes a Zerg player like Bly will be thinking to himself, whoops, sorry, I forgot to put on this little overlay. It's up there now. A Zerg player like Bly will be thinking, great, I want you to try to build your Nexus now. I'm actually going to be getting ahead in this drone count because I'm going to be getting an earlier queen. And I can begin doing my double larva production a lot sooner than you can be doing your double probe production. Hell, White Raw's only just now starting the Nexus. But what is the one thing that we have not fallen behind on? It is our gateway tech. We are ahead in tech. Wherever you're ahead, focus on that. Let me just... God, this room is so bright. I'm actually going to see what this looks like when I pop down this exposure a little bit. Oh my god, is that a relief on the eyes or what? Yeah, let's go ahead and, yep, let's lighten it up a little bit this way. That looks pretty decent. Put the exposure back and drop the brightness down a little bit. Oh, okay. Yeah, that looks a lot more normal. My face is looking really red in the camera, but that's okay. There we go. Sorry, I didn't mean to blast your eyes with my face! So as we come back to the game, again, where does our edge lie? Not in economy, but in tech. What is going to be a great thing that exploits a player who's behind on tech? The answer is different for every race. What best exploits a player who's behind on tech? If I'm Protoss, it's going to be a Void Ray. If I'm Zerg, like let's say it's in a Zerg where Zerg, my opponent is behind on his tech. In other words, we probably have a faster layer or some faster buildings. We're going to get our edge by going for something like a Spire. Going for something like fast double upgrades. That's our edge. And we want to try to exploit that as much as possible. Even more specifically, Bly doesn't have a 3rd base up. If he starts this 3rd base now, our Void Ray is going to be able to exploit the fact that there's no creep adjoining them. Again, the thing that was not delayed was our Gateway and our Cybernetics Core. The thing that was delayed was our Nexus, and we can see that we're already falling behind in that worker count. So nifty thrifty. Love that Whiterot does this. A nice little push to force some more Zerglings to be made. This is not something that you need to overthink. This is just always going to be pretty good. By the way, that's the coolest Xel'Naga Watchtower ever. Yeah, that's like an Age of Empires style Xel'Naga Watchtower. So, looks like we have Bly, or looks like we have the fast Phoenix. I think that's actually an error. The Void Ray is always going to be a little bit better. And what's wrong with the shirt? My shirt's great. Everyone in chat has been talking about my shirt nonstop. This is a great shirt. You know what? You know what? There we go. Try to focus now. Good luck focusing. Oh no, we made a wrinkle. Ha, I can counter troll. Nice. Oh, there's a wrinkle. Whatever will I do? So Whiterot, I think, is doing the Gateway follow-up. This is great. In general, going for some sort of combo attack is good. Some sort of air and ground composition. Very difficult for a Zerg player to deal with. We see that Bly is not quite well equipped to deal with this. I mean, specifically, he doesn't even have any drones here. Can't really build any sort of additional spore crawlers. Creep only just now adjoining, so those queens there are going to be late. And Whiterot is exploiting this nice little tech differential advantage. Yep, Void Ray is going to be there, going to punish this hatch. Not much that the Zergy buddy can do about that. By the way, there's the pylon hiding behind that doodad. So great. We see a lot of good stuff. We've killed off this expansion. So now, here's an important question. What is our next best move now that we've killed off this expansion? What would we expect our opponent to be behind in? Well, he's going to be a little bit more behind in economy. It's normal for a Protoss player to be on 2 base right now. It's very unusual for a Zerg player to have lost this 3rd base at this point in time. So, we want to do something that helps us exploit the economy. Doing a huge push like this is okay. You just have to be very careful. I would have no objection as if I'm in Whiterot's position in terms of pulling back. That doesn't bug me at all in a spot like this. We're obviously dealing with a great bit of damage here as we're pushing in. But I want to be doing a lot of chrono boosting on the probes. Chrono boosting on these gateways to try to win with this push, I think, is inconsistent. We've damaged his economy. That's a near killing blow. If we do this push to force him to make more units, that's great. But doing this push and following it up with more units and following it up with more units and following it up with more units, the only real edge our opponent has is that he has only one location to defend. So as we're just sort of rallying a whole bunch of stuff in, our focus should really be in getting that economic lead. And all of a sudden, in this position, right now, from around the 11-minute mark to now, we're in the position of we need to defend as best we can and be going for 3rd base. We did crippling economic damage. How do we exploit our edge? We get good defense, and we get our 3rd up faster. Clean, simple, easy, Fabrizi. And notice how similar that was to the last game. Crazy all in. Crazy fast layer into spine crawler push. What? We defend it. And then we want to just play overall defensively and be going for a fast 3rd. Sure, we can do a little push here. Sure, we can do a little push in this game too, but we want to make sure that we get the good defense up. And I worry that, look at this, we still have units being rallied and maybe I can tip the edge. And the answer is maybe you can. But maybe is not going to get you a really high win percentage. It's going to sometimes work, sometimes not work. You want to do some damage here at the start, and then focus on here, because suddenly there's no maybe about it. You are in guaranteed to do well mode. So now Bly has built up this big force of Infestor Zealot. Our tech, our Robo Bay, is behind. We don't have defense here at the front because we were focusing so much on that offense. And look, we really do have a big economic lead. Zerg is behind on drones, is just now trying to get the third up, and we have plenty of money to be able to take a third once we're safe. However, we spent way too much on the attack, and that crippled our ability to have a good defense at a time like this. This is a really close battle right now, and it should not be close. It really, really should not be close at all. We're desperate to get up our Colossus. Oh, thank God. Now we can just easily clean this up. They're so good. But we've just had our front shattered. It looks like we didn't get an upgrade out that we would really want up. We've lost our expansion, which stinks. And note that we have just lost the edge that we had. Our edge was economic after we killed off the third. Well, actually, let me go through the full process. When he blocked our hatch, our edge was tech. We used that tech to kill off an expansion, and then our edge was in economy. And then we had the opportunity to focus on economy and defense, but instead we went balls to the wall on this attack, and that crippled us in terms of being able to defend this follow-up. Now we have White Rot in this awkward spot where I guess my edge is the Colossus. My edge is in tech. He has only Lings and Infestors, and I have the right mixture to kill that, but of course Bly is a little bit too good to just lose to some counter Colossus. And what we're actually seeing here is a very common thing that pops up on the ladder. We have a player like Bly who does crazy stuff start to finish. Starting it off with this maneuver, the hatchery at our expansion. Following it up with this sort of very fast layer tech. Oops, I thought it was at 10 minutes. There we go. Now at the 10-minute mark. For this kind of faster layer tech into Infestor. That's a little bit unusual as well. He even did this follow-up push with all of his units that broke down our front door. This is, again, very uncommon. So, in the experience of playing on the ladder, you end up against a lot of unorthodoxy, and Bly really won this game because it was just weird thing after weird thing after weird thing. There were some huge holes in connecting all these pieces together. Bly didn't really have an answer for that big push at the third that had the Void Ray and the Zealots that White Raw was able to very effectively exploit. Bly didn't really have an answer. And if White Raw kills that off and then pulls back and defends, he's going to be in fine shape. But the weirdness can often be very confusing. I don't really see a player block my expansion and then go zergling Infestor, so I'm just going to attack. A lot of players have this instinct of, well, I don't really know what's going on, let me just try to kill him off. That seems pretty reasonable, and that's okay to make attack attempts, but you don't want to do these huge swathing commitments to attacks. Always be asking yourself where your edge lies. In this game, it was tech at the start, and then eventually it was economy, and when your focus and your edge is in economy, just focus on defending and taking more bases. That should be the big thing. We're going to go ahead and take a couple of extra questions, so let's go ahead and do that before I go to that airport. I'm ready for your expansions. And do you like my birds? Like my birds sing? I have my window open so I can hear my birds and my stupid idiot lemon tree. Let me go ahead and get the chat loaded on up properly. Taking questions, refresh. And by the way, to have your questions grabbed, all you need to do is begin the question with Dear Day 9, as in DAY9, and that is how the bot grabs the question and sends them to me. To me. We're not getting any questions. There we go. There we go. Let me see here. Oh, we have one question that came in from Pellinor. What is my favorite kind of animal? Lately, I'm into birds. Lately, I'm into birds. Birds have been my thing as of late, such as this very unhappy owl. God, I love that owl. He's miserable. Oh, I love that owl. All right, here's a great question from Froggy Gustav. Day 9, how do you ensure that you know what type of ahead you are? Quite honestly, I don't ever want you to think of it more complicated than Is my army really, really, really strong right now? Is my tech really far ahead right now? Or is my economy really far ahead right now? Just think in those three basic terms. And if at any point you don't quite know, actually, I would just say as a regular exercise, think of your builds that you have and think of what your edge is. Here's a really simple one. If a Zerg player early expands, and I'm Terran, and I open up Hellion, my edge is going to be in my army. I have a better army than he does. So cool. What am I going to use with that edge? Well, I can do some pressure on the front, and I can expand behind me. Nice. Cool. Cool. Pretty simple, pretty clean, pretty clear. And sometimes it does take a little bit of analysis after the replay, and that's generally where most of the time you'll start to see where you're ahead. Oh, he blocked my hatch. Well, my old build was early expand and go for a 6-gate push. That relies on my economy being really, really good so I can get a big army, and then I use my army to do some damage. Well, I don't have a good economy anymore. Can I have a bigger army than him? Can I have better tech than him? You just look for the other categories. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Katos, did you paint your room? It looks a lot brighter. It's just brighter because it's the daytime and I have windows. Normally I just do it at night. Let me go ahead and just take 2 more questions and then I'm going to go to the airport. People are asking about Skyrim. What was my favorite mythical creature? So Westy Gaming says, Day 9, how do I get ahead of a player when we always seem to exchange fairly evenly? Just go for more bases if you're looking pretty even. Focus on getting your upgrades ahead and getting more expansions and less on attacking. I mean, just think of it in terms of if we're pretty much dead even, where is my advantage? On the defensive side. Because if he has 10 guys at home and I have 10 guys at home and everything else is identical, and he moves out to attack, when he arrives, I'm going to have more than 10, so I win. That's standard defender's advantage. So trying to exploit that by expanding a lot more aggressively is really the key. And honestly, if you are getting to the point where you're 20 minutes and you're still mirroring each other, don't worry, don't panic, don't force it. Wait for those advantages to pop up. Take a 6th base and then note that your 6th is ahead of his 6th. And then try to lock down his 6th base so you can maintain that lead in economy. And for one last question. From Biscuit Nielsen. Says, Day 9, in the first example you suggested, that White Raw should take a 3rd to emphasize the economy. But at that moment, Bly was ahead in army. Would that not open you up to an attack on the 3rd? The important thing to note is that when your head switches gear and you say, I'm ahead in economy, I need to defend and focus on taking a 3rd, it is not an instant process. It is an instant shift in mindset. For instance, right here, let me come back to this moment. Right here in this game, after you kill off this 3rd, there is an instantaneous shift in mindset when I'm in White Raw's position, which is I need to play defensively and get up a 3rd as soon as I can, so that way I can exploit my economic lead. This will probably unfold over the course of the next 5 or 6 minutes. The mistake that I wouldn't want you to make is to go, I'm in econ mode, I better take 7 bases because I need to exploit my economy. As long as you are keeping that as your major goal, obviously your first goal is to focus on defense. So in the first example, in that first White Raw game, what I would do is I would say, okay, I held off the attack, I don't have an army, how do I defend and set up a 3rd? I would think, okay, well, I'm probably not going to go 8-gate Colossus and then expand because that's too much focused on 2-basing. I'm probably going to go for I would probably do 5-gate with Blink and Immortals and Sentries and take a faster 3rd. I would do something geared towards taking a 3rd base. If I'm a Zerg player and I'm now in economy mode, I would probably do something like focus on making drones, and I would build some roaches to push his Hellions back, so I could then take a third and transfer my drones eventually. That would happen a little quicker. That's talking about the next 2 or 3 minutes or so of the game. But again, don't try to just blast it down. Definitely do exactly what Biscuit Nielsen's talking about, and be aware that we probably as an army don't want to do it right now, but still kind of keeping that on the mind. I am so good at timing. It's now 12:15, so now I'm going to start heading to the airport. But until then, guys, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this pops up at 7 p.m. on the autoplay queue. And if not, then I'll see you on the archives. Bye, guys. See you on Sunday and Monday.